Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Just as a stress test, could you please just put in the chat that you can hear me okay? So our first time on YouTube Live rather than doing our webinar platform. So would love confirmation of that and help from you there, please. Thumbs up in the chat if possible. All right, awesome. Thank you all. Well, we've got a great question to kick things off here. Let's go straight to it. Pros and cons. Thank you, Peg Anderson, for this. Pros and cons of renting unfurnished properties in France. So, unfurnished properties, interestingly, on long-term rentals in France, you get quite an even split. So depending on the city or the area, it can change a little bit. If you're going for unfurnished, you do get the advantage of the leases being longer in your favor. So usually it's a 3-year lease rather than a 1-year lease, but you still retain the right to be able to hand your notice in at any given point. But it can be between 1 and 3 months notice, depending on the buy with that. The extra sort of insight to it is you get more creative rights too. So you'll be able to make the place more of your own. Remember, in France, there's more of a culture of renting. More people rent than they do buy typically. And so as a result of that, you get more flexibility with it. Now, if it's a furnished property, you have less ability to do so. But what I would say is the biggest advantage in terms of pros on unfurnished is that you won't have so much kickback if you're coming over with pets or multiple pets and things. Then, although they're not allowed to downright block you on your application because of your pets, it can sort of get the relationship off onto the wrong footing. So if you're going for unfurnished, then the idea of having pets coming along with you won't dissuade the landlords or agencies quite so much. The cons of it, well, again, the landlord's committing to you for 3 years. And as a result of that, if there's already friction because your income isn't in France already, then this idea of committing you for the longer, and so the risk of you not paying rent and not being able to get insurance out against your case for the rent not being paid, this idea of 3 years and committing you for that long seems a bit scarier. So sometimes it can be a little bit hard to negotiate with if you haven't got the messaging right at the start. And I guess I'm going to get more questions on that throughout this. Hopefully that gives you a good outline though, and yeah, feel free to add in some more. You hear tapping on the desk. All right, okay, hang on, let me see if I can do something about that. Are utilities usually included when renting? Good question, thank you for that. So when you look on the agency websites or the portals out there, Le Bon Coin, Se Loger, there will be a combination of properties that have utilities included and not. There is a slight misconception, though, that when you see charges, it necessarily includes electricity and gas and water. Sometimes charges, particularly if it's an apartment, will only be relating to the building charges. So, cleaning of the property, the maintenance, the waste disposal, stuff like that. So it's really important when you're looking at the annonce, the property description, that you're seeing or you're distinguishing between the two. It's not uncommon for utilities to be included, and I would actually watch out for that, because if you're planning on getting a French bank account in the long term here, or you're looking at maybe getting a mortgage one day to buy a property, or another example I've had recently is someone wanting to lease a car for an extended period of time, they will want a proof of address. They want to see that you've established your economic tie to the country. And the best way to do that typically is to show a long-term lease or a property deed, and on top of that, utility bills in your name, rather than it being in the landlord or agency's name. So if you can avoid it, it's worth avoiding it. It'll make things much easier in the long run. keep the questions coming, guys, because this is my Q&A sessions, and you can check out previous Q&As that we've done online. It's all about, I'm going to keep this running whilst your questions are here, and I'll answer as much as I can, as clearly as I can. But if the questions dry up, then we'll just end the session quicker. So I'm counting on you to make this a session worth everybody's time, and hopefully you can take inspiration from other people's questions on this too. Okay, is it better to wait to open a bank account when you move to your long-term rental city versus current temporary city? That's a really good question, Dawn. Thank you. Okay, so when you say temporary, the current temporary city, are you sort of referring to the context of you staying in an Airbnb currently and probably do not have utility bills in your name yet? I'd love extra context there. In my experience with this, it can be better to wait until you are established in your long-term desired location, because if you go to someone like a Crédit Agricole, who have great coverage across France, their systems and I guess internal CRM models work regionally. So it can be quite frustrating. You could go to, say, a Crédit Agricole in Toulouse and then move to and get the account open and everything. You're on a resident account, not a non-resident one, and then you move to the Charente-Maritime. Well, I know that the departments are completely segregated from each other. They don't talk to each other very well, and you may need to go through the painful steps all over again. Whereas if you started in Toulouse but then decided you moved to a quieter part, let's say higher up in the Haute-Garonne towards Montauban, the systems will still communicate with each other fairly well. Past that, you've put yes on that, Dawn. So I would definitely wait until you've got utility bills in your name before trying to apply for a French bank account. Otherwise, you're going to be put on a non-resident desk, pay 3 times the fees, and get considerably worse service for the pleasure of it too. So watch out for that. In the US, leases are often automatically turned into month to month unless they offer a new lease. In France, is it similar, or is it lease is over and you have to leave? It is similar, Jeff. That's a great question. So what you're looking at here is you'll sign a lease. So let's say we're going for a furnished 1 year. It will be written in the lease that if you the landlord has to give 3 months notice to you if he plans to end it at the term, at the end of the year. And you can give 1 month notice to leave any time in that period. But it will automatically set and renew to another year. And so another year protection for you on that. Hang on, so how long do you get preference on a new lease? Or after the 3 years, can the landlord say, bye, I'm leasing someone else? Yeah, so again, if the landlord's looking to end the relationship with you, he or she has to give very clear reasons as to why. So the French system is so much more protective than what we're used to in the US or the UK or elsewhere, like it's significantly so. And it ties back to why it's so hard to get a rental in the first place. They have to be super cautious because it's really hard to change that journey once they've committed to you. So in this case, you've got the landlord, if he's going to end your relationship, has to sort of say it's because he's trying to sell the property, or major changes to the property. It's no longer safe for you, and so he has to make these changes. He can't just chop and change for the sake of it. And the same applies to rental increases as well. You don't see dramatic rent jumps from year to year because the landlord will have to communicate with the local commune and justify why a price might go up. They can't just sort of wake up one morning and uproot you. How would you find a rental in Dijon specifically? Do you have established contacts there? Thank you for the question. So through doing this, we have established contacts, I guess, and agencies that we know are open to working with international clients, but we never ever rely on them. Most of our leases and the properties we source come through the property portals that you guys could access freely anyway. Our favorite ones are Le Bon Coin, Se Loger, Bien Ici. But our model is to try and capture the whole market for you. I've got a team of 4 people that will source properties continuously, and it goes through to the bookers. So they'll contact the landlords and agencies and pitch your dossier to them so we can get pre-validation that your profile matches the requirements of what the landlord's looking for, and that it's something that can be done here. And then and only then would we send the properties to you. So we kind of flip the journey on its head, because the worst thing I think that we all experience is you find a property and potentially you can even get a viewing for it. You go there or you view it, you do a virtual viewing and you fall in love with it, only for the dossier to be rejected after. And that's kind of the thing we're trying to eliminate before the chance of that even happens. And then from there, if you're in Dijon, then we'll be able to map out the areas a little bit more and do a workshop with you directly to make sure you're in a place that makes the most sense. Hey, Eric, thanks for joining us. So in urban areas, do apartment leases often include access to designated parking spaces? No, not necessarily. In fact, in historical centres, and you get the sort of beautiful apartments with the Osmanian features. Parking certainly isn't always included, and there's a framework to think through there. I'd love to go through our data and find out how often parking is included, actually, Eric. I will do my best to get that together and email it over to you. But I would say, as a gut guess, I reckon only 1 in 3 in urban areas have parking already set to it. Particularly in historical centres, these places are made to be walkable. And so I guess, the planning around that doesn't always lend to the extra spaces. So I understand there are forms of rent control in areas in France. Can you elaborate on how that works? Yep. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, Shells. There are certain cities that will have caps in place to prevent people from abusing Airbnb too much, and so that can cap supply on that side a little bit. Or they will be incentivizing landlords to make their place available to international workers. Maybe there's a lot of multinational companies based there, and so they have lots of families coming and going, and they need to ensure that economy is being supported. So the commune can influence in that sense, but there's also the idea around rent control and price. Every time a landlord wants to increase it, he or she has to prove that it's in line with inflation in the area and that it matches up. And so there's quite a process they have to follow through that. They'll have to go to the commune and provide data to back it up. And it needs to get signed off. So they can't wake up from one day to the next and decide they're increasing your rent by 20%. It's just not a feature. If more often than not, you'll see rents increases of between 50 and 120 euros for the whole year, rather than it being that kind of increase for the month. So I hope that gives you some detail. Are you searching for fees in addition to fees paid to local real estate agents? Great question. Yes. So we don't have like real estate agents that we network with. We just canvass the whole market, get as much of the opportunity on the table for you, and then help you with the viewings and translations from that point onwards. We don't have an affiliation with them. As a result of that, if you fall in love with a property that's agency run, you will have to pay their agency fees on top of our sourcing fees. So it's certainly something to budget for. Do you have a service to create a dossier for people wishing to move to France? Great question, Robert. So we look at these things regularly. And if you want, you can email through your circumstances, and we'll do that free of charge. If you're only looking for the dossier help and you're not looking for the extra stuff, then that's absolutely fine. We look at this stuff all day long. So if you want an extra set of eyes on it, I'd be happy to help. Check out our website on that. So we don't have a paid service for it, but happy to help if needed. What have we got here? Is there a seasonal ebb and flow of available rents? Great question, David. Yes. So we would really struggle to take on a search. I'm always really cautious because our model's based on, we take on the risk here. If we're unable to find a place for you, then we'll refund you straight away, that initial 750. So if someone came to me and is trying to find a place in the height of summer when Airbnb rentals, they could be charging 3 or 4 times what they would charge in a long-term let. The amount of stock coming on really limits your opportunity. So I typically would be turning down searches in those zones at that time of year. It's much easier to wait until September or start conversations with people with the view that you say, oh, look, I understand you're going to try and get and recoup some of the extra money on the table in the summer months, but can we get a conversation going for September? That works really well. And if you can do some networking on your side on that, then I'd really suggest you do so. Now, that doesn't count for the whole of France, though, right? So Nice is a very in-demand city from a tourism perspective, and so there'll always be ebbs and flows there. But if you're looking at places like Lyon or Toulouse, certainly Bordeaux, they're still in-demand cities, but the level of tourism and for the sort of seaside view properties, you're less exposed to it. So you can be really strategic about that. Bonjour Ben, can you kindly comment on benefits of opening an account stateside with a French bank, i.e. Crédit Agricole par? Yeah, okay. Philippe, so I'm not talking about Crédit Agricole directly here, but in my experience, looking at the non-resident accounts, so these are the accounts that you open before you've established your economic ties to the country, I can't see the real value in it. They charge you a lot more money and they don't offer much service once you're on the ground there. And I don't see why you would need one until you're in the country either. So my suggestion instead would be to keep everything as is, maybe open an account with one of the self-service platforms out there like Wise or Revolut or N26. They'll give you an EU IBAN, or a SEPA registered IBAN anyway. And with that, you'll be able to pay for your rent initially, and you'll be able to get utility bills set up in your name. And then and only then would you look at opening up an account with Crédit Agricole, probably the branch around the corner. You walk in with all those documents and walk out with an account the same day. You see, it's much better. The non-resident accounts cost more money. You're going to have to do a lot of back and forth and sending just the right paperwork each time. And you have limits on how much money you can spend per day, per week, and per month. So it's quite restrictive. What about rentals that are not listed in the regular rental sites? How are those found? Do you work with private owners or listers? Good question, Dawn. So I don't like this idea of off-market rentals. I'm not sure how much of the market is actually out there on that. So I don't trust. I've got a real big mistrust of agents raising these kinds of opportunities. It just sounds like they're onboarding a new property and they're taking their time with that. So whether that works because if you've got a great property, why wouldn't you list it on the rental sites? I think that's my view. Everyone's got their own opinion on it. We do work with private owners and listers. Typically that comes up in rural settings around France. So it'll be property owners, usually Brits actually, who are having a hard time selling their place. And so instead of trying to force it, they'll make their property available on long-term lets instead. So we do get messages through for that. And that can be a really good strategy because obviously international owners of property are going to be more inclined and less risk averse to people with income outside of France. What have we got here? Moving to Bergerac in May. Yay, Bergerac. Airbnb 1 month, 3 month rental for one. Would that agreement help your folks in the search for rental for 2 people with a dog? Absolutely. I think this is the way, right? If you can get the Airbnb initially, you get control over the visa process for 1. But past that, you're going to be on the ground there. And we're going to be able to tell the landlords and agencies that we've got this great profile. Put your best foot forward on that front. And you'll be able to walk into the properties and we can translate whilst you're doing it. That really will stand you apart. Naturally, landlords will go, how can I put context on this? A good 20% of the listings we book each month will be all virtual. So, in your case, you wouldn't have flown to Bergerac yet, and you're just trying to get a long-term rental straight from the bat. Now, they always freak me out because you haven't had a chance to test the place out in person and get a feel for it and smell it or whatever. um, and but I understand for some people the idea of chopping and changing, unsettling, the dog's vibe by moving from place to place is not going to be fun. So but if you can get out there, stay in an Airbnb first, and be there in person, it makes so much of a difference. So I'm really pleased you're doing that. It makes a difference in terms of your experience. It makes a difference in terms of the receptiveness of the landlords and agencies because you're there in person. You're not just some fictive character, Do you help through the entire rental process, like review of the leases? Yeah, great question, Phil. Thank you for that. So if you end up finding a place that you absolutely love and you go ahead with things, we'll be talking you through the lease from start to finish on that and reviewing it and providing you some feedback on it so you know exactly what you're signing. And the same applies with the inventory stage too, which is probably the most important point you need to experience as a tenant, because it's taking into account the state of the property as you bring it on, and your rights in that property are managed from that point onwards. So if you wanted changes made to it, usually there's like a 3-month window that you can work with the landlords and agencies on it, and it's defined in the inventory piece. So we'll talk you through the lease. We'll make sure we're helping you remove as much risk as possible on that. And quite often we play devil's advocate with you in terms of the properties that we found. Do they definitely make the most sense? Because we want to make sure that it's your best. This first year living in France is going to be quite stressful. You're going to be experiencing lots of new things, and you want to make sure the home that you're using as HQ for year one provides you with as much serenity as possible, I think. So we really do try and take as much care in that as we can. Any thoughts on we help with utility setup and all that stuff too. Actually, I should have mentioned that. Any thoughts on the rental market in Carcassonne or Narbonne? Looking to rent from September 26, possibly an Airbnb style, like you mentioned. Great places to land. Both have really good infrastructure around it, so you'd be able to explore the rest of France from if you decided to. Anyway, arriving that time of year is very advisable because simply, Carcassonne and Narbonne have real tourist attraction too. So I would be worried about stock from between July and August, certainly. I think that's a very feasible plan. And arriving in Airbnb initially will really make a big difference, I would say. Lily Johnson, thanks for the question on fees. So we charge a success fee of €1,500. It's split into 2 installments. So €750 to start the work and get your dossier prepped and start outreach to the landlords, and then €750 once you found the place you love and hopefully you're really excited, you got a signed lease and you got the keys, etc. If we're unable to find the perfect place for you for whatever reason, maybe our model doesn't support the criteria that you're looking for, then we will pay that $750 back to you as soon as you ask for it. No questions asked. So we try and remove as much risk as we can on that front. We spoke the other day. Josh, due to cats who want to get an unfurnished long-term in advance, we don't have anyone for a video walkthrough. Yeah, so this is the trick, right? We cover the whole of France. The whole team's digital, based in the Charente-Maritime and the Tarn-et-Garonne. And as a result of that, we're not there in person to review the properties. That's why I prefer you guys to be there. Now, we're on a Google Meets call and translating throughout and coordinating everything, but there's only so much that can be covered there. Now, when clients feel they would like the extra eyes on it, then we can find people locally to do that. Other relocation agencies will help out here and there, or there's ways of getting a third party to get eyes on it. But even then, I still feel nervous about the whole idea of doing it all digitally, because everyone's got their own feeling and vibe, and when you walk into a place, your standards may be different to another person's standards, and there's a lot of context that goes into that. So it's really worth thinking about. But yeah, from Jeff's stance, your story is a really interesting one, because you've got the cats. You don't want to be going from Airbnb to Airbnb and creating that stress. So I absolutely understand why you want to go for long term, straight from the start. Should I hire an interpreter to go with me or an in-person viewing? Yeah, well, if you're not using our service for the search, then it can be a really good idea to have an interpreter there, or even if it's just on the phone. They don't need to be with you in person on that viewing, right? You could, if you're using our one, then no, everyone in the team is French speaking, so would be interpreting for you on that. If you're not using our service, guys, then I do think it's really helpful to have a translator, if it's just, even just on the phone, just so you can ask your questions and they're being relayed in the right way. Because I guess you could walk around with like a Google Translate scenario or a ChatGPT thing going on. I always worry about the context of that. There's so much nuance in the language there that could go wrong pretty quickly. So is there a different reception by landlords to dossiers of the income from different sources, such as a pension? Yeah, great question, Eric. Thank you for asking this. So there's already a big difference for someone that's already got income in France, a pay slip in France, or a pension in France, versus someone that doesn't. You're already on your back foot there. Now, if you're just reviewing everyone with income outside of France, pensions are definitely the gold standard, because they can get their head around that and the consistency and the stability of it. Second to that would probably be job income from a paid salary. Now, that comes second to pensions, because people understand that actually there is this feeling that things can change quite quickly in the States, and so employment contracts aren't so sturdy in the States or in the UK as they would be in France. French employment contracts, much like tenancy agreements, are gold plated, man. It's really hard to you'd have to really go out of your way to get fired in France. So, and then below that, so you've got pension, you've got pay slips, and then below that you've got investment income. Now, investment income comes last in that list, because it's quite hard for a landlord in France to get their head around the different types of investment structures we've got abroad, and how consistent they perform, and what they sort of output. If you've got a pot of savings, then I'd suggest looking at annuities or something that pay regular income out. Basically, what I'm saying is I can't understate how important it is to have regular, consistent income. And if you can tilt your dossier towards that, that will certainly increase your chances of getting a better hit rate. Good question, Eric. Thank you. What else have we got in here? Okay, I think we're hitting a good cadence of questions. So keep your questions coming, guys. Like I said, once the questions dry up, then I'll end the session. There's been some really good ones, though, touching on the income pieces and the different locations. Seasonality is going to be a big one again this year. Right, what have we got? Thanks, Jeff, again. How does a US 401k social security rate on the scale of what we'd like? It's in a dossier. So social security is your grand slam there, Jeff. You lead with that. That's the one. It's super easy to translate and explain. You get your letter of how much you're going to be paid each month. Lead with that. Then the 401k is a lot dicier. I would even, if you can, start with social security, not even mention the 401k in the dossier in your sort of phase one outreach, and then the 401k appears. It's going to be helpful for like using a third party guarantor and things like that. But it could blur the lines initially. You've got to be really clever about how you structure the messaging around your financials so that it's clear. Sometimes showing less is better It depends obviously how high your social security is. Right, fee include. Right, no, thank you for the question, Rhys. So our flat fee is for the long-term sourcing only. We charge €250 to get the utilities set up and €150 for the telecoms and things. Banks, I don't always charge for, because I believe once we've helped you with the utilities, it's going to be super easy for you to get a local account. So we don't tend to charge for that help. But the reason we don't include it in the flat rate is because sometimes the agency involved, you're paying agency fees there, they can be super helpful in getting the utilities set up. And sometimes the landlords are absolute sweethearts, and they'll help you out with it too. So we usually cross that bridge when we come to it. Ideally, I don't want to ask you to pay for things you don't need. So you kind of want to play it by ear depending on the situation that's at hand. Do you have specific recommendations for PhD students planning to be in an area for 5 years on a limited budget? Oh, what a great question that is. I can't tell you how many requests I get for Paris, and I reject them. Firstly, Paris is an absolute nightmare of a market to work in unless you've got the right circumstances for it. And students, very much fits into that category too. We've done placements for students in Toulouse, Bordeaux, and Marseille without any issues. So Marseille, it was a medical PhD. Toulouse was business, and Bordeaux was business. Out of those three, Toulouse is your best bet in terms of limited budget comfortably. Is seasonality a big factor in finding an apartment in Dijon? No. Part of the reasons why I love Dijon is the offer and demand ratio seems to be consistent right the way through. So you're going to be absolutely fine there, Phil. Obscure question. Come on, Jeff, you're challenging me. What is typical internet like? Speeds, type connection. Right. This is a great one because growing up in rural France, internet was a real issue. And I had very limited opportunities to enjoy Xbox as much as I'd have liked as a teenager. But things have developed quite well since. I know in cities, internet's fantastic. You're not going to have any issues, Jeff, and you can. I've got no worries for you on that front. If you're going to rural France, sometimes we're helping clients get to packages in place, and you're spending a lot of time auditing, actually calling the mairie and the commune and getting real live feedback on, whether there's infrastructure changes coming up or which providers seem to be the most active in the area. They're really helpful for that. So that's how to play it if you wanted to dig deeper. But my recollection is you're not going super rural there, so I don't think you need to worry about it. Thank you for the extra questions, guys. Where are we? I've got lost in it. You've put so many questions in. Okay, so Shells, back to you. Is it common for people to take a September to June lease on a furnished place, move out, or possibly travel back to a home country and then return to the same place? Okay, I see. So yes, that has come up a handful of times. For that to work, you're not sourcing a long-term rental you're not sourcing this model in the same way you would in a typical long-term lease. So you're going to be hunting for people that do short-term lets. So you're on Airbnb and Booking.com. You're messaging them, talking through your circumstances, and they will absolutely jump at the chance to get full occupancy in off-season at reduced rate. Comes up a lot. That works pretty well actually down on the Riviera. You're just gonna have to play a bit of a contact sport with it. If you're going to do that properly and make sure your rights are still in place, you want a 1-year lease to be signed rather than a season-year lease. And so you'll be signing 1-year lease, and you'll say, look, I need you to put that lease in place for me, but I will give my 1 month notice straight away. So they'll get the 10-month notice each time. that's the only way really you can shape it to your advantage, I guess. I hope I've explained that clearly. If I haven't, Shells, just drop me a comment and we can go over it again. Okay, yeah, PhD in Lyon. We haven't done one in Lyon. Lyon isn't the cheapest, so that would be my one worry with that. How much are you hoping to spend per month on rent? Let me know, and I can give you some extra feedback on that. Thanks for the feedback, Angela. Appreciate that. We haven't retired for a few years, but still looking. What are your thoughts on Strasbourg, Colmar area for US retirees? Airbnb is expensive. Thanks. Thank you for the lovely feedback on that. I love doing this stuff, so I really appreciate you following on. I think Strasbourg and the Colmar area are fantastic options to start year one. The reasons why you wouldn't typically would be basically the weather, the only downside could potentially be, and I'm speaking specifically for the Colmar area here, is the type of property that you might be looking for. How often will it become available on a long-term rental level? I do worry about stock there. So it might be worth stress testing that a little bit more. Strasbourg's a fantastic place, great connections. I was on a call yesterday with a client and we're just reviewing Strasbourg versus Paris. And yeah, I was really surprised by how quickly, if you get the fast train, how quickly you can get back into Paris and get that really big mega city fix if you wanted it, and then get back out again. And I think Strasbourg has so much to offer, so definitely worth investigating. Thanks for the question, Natalie. How hard is it to rent a long-term apartment in Nice if you are not of retirement age and you just have savings, no revenue? Okay, you do have enough savings. So it's possible in Nice to get a long-term rental without regular income in place, purely because there's a lot more agencies that are used to international profiles. How does that look in real terms? Well, it means that they'll be open to working with a third-party guarantor. So Natalie, what you need to do, even at this planning stage, is go on to any of the third-party guarantors out there, Smart Garant, Garant Me, Cautionneal, any of them. Upload your savings documents to show how much you've got there, and they will generate a certificate showing how much they're willing to follow you up to. With that, you can then take the number, go on to Le Bon Coin or Se Loger, and use that as your benchmark for the types of properties you could potentially apply to. That isn't to say it's going to be easy, but if you can get your messaging right around that, I think you stand a pretty good chance. It just might take longer than you'd hope. Our typical searches take between 3 and 6 weeks. When the savings, when you're coming over with just savings, it's certainly more complicated. So you're just going to have to play quite a smart game there. But please start with that guarantor path, get the certificate, and it'll give you a benchmark of at least how much they're willing to provide insurance on your case up to. Would paying cash in advance for a 90-day rental and an Airbnb bypass all credit requirements? I don't understand your question there, Lou. Sorry. Would paying cash in advance for a 90-day rental in an Airbnb? Can you give me more context there? Sorry. I'll definitely want to give you an answer, but I'm not completely sure I'm on the right thing. So, Robert, you're back. We're retired and live off our investments. They pay out a steady amount monthly and could show this payout over several months using bank statements. Would this be better than showing? Yes, absolutely. You've got the message. And if you could get a letter from your financial advisor showing the planning around that too, what you've done there is you've given yourself a window where you could say, right, we're coming over. We've got a portfolio of investments and things, but we've set aside this amount of money. Or we've gone for these vehicles because they produce steady income each month. And when we say steady income, we mean this amount into this account each month. This is what's going to sustain us in France. rather than sending a whole chunk of documents over with no explanation of what's going on, because it would, you would just lose them. I hope that makes sense. Robert Woodworth, thank you for the question. I've set up Wise account that will, along with my dossier and proof of income and guarantee, be sufficient to have you begin an apartment search. Yeah, I mean, so I would love to understand, Robert. You've got the fundamentals there, right? You've got the financials organized. With the Wise account, you'll be able to pay the landlord and pay utilities, so that's great. The proof of income and guarantor piece you've got in place, so that's cool. So then the game is, well, we need to answer the questions: why are you coming to France and this part of France, and what's going on there? Because I guarantee that's the first question the landlord agency asks. So, well, why is Robert coming here? You know, so you have to answer that and give them something, a piece of you that they can get latched onto, because you want them rooting for you. You know, so you get that bit right, and then the financial element to it comes second to that, and that's speaking to why they should trust you. I hope that makes sense. Lou, you've got me hooked at Lou Johnson 6650. Could you rephrase your question, or if someone on the chat's seen that question too and they understand where they're coming from, have a go at clarifying it for me, because I want to give an answer. I just that's fried my brain a little bit. Okay, great. I'm glad that made sense. David, when you say to make clear why you're choosing to rent there, do you mean a narrative source state? Yes, correct. So we use a cover letter on the dossiers. It's nothing like hugely elaborate, but you're just going through the story as to why this move is happening. Because if they don't understand that, I don't think they're going to make much of an effort in reading through the rest of your dossier, because it's going to be in a language they don't understand or a slightly different format or whatever, particularly if they've got other viewings and other dossiers coming across their desk too. But B, they won't trust it until potentially it's too late. And you really want to, I can't say, it's really strange how France is like this, but it's that human connection. So it's why we always pick up the phone to these people and tell the story as it is, rather than just relying on outbound messaging, because I don't think the needle gets moved consistently enough otherwise. So the cover letter gives you an opportunity to control the narrative from the start, and then you build that's sent after we've spoken to them over the phone. So, and if you're not using our service for this, you want to try and have those conversations if you can. You give yourself an opportunity to control the narrative from the beginning, and then the dossier is just an explanation, an extension of it. How long should the cover letter be? Not too long. How many characters do we use? We've got 75 characters for the initial outreach. We've got 300 words for it's usually 300 words is what we aim for in the cover letter. I think Lou is asking whether you need a dossier if you're renting via Airbnb. Okay, thank you for that, Karen, because I was lost. No, you don't. Airbnb gives you loads of protections and lots of good refund policies and things. They're trying to make it as easy as possible for the landlords. So you don't need to do anything special on that front, and you don't need to pay in advance. You just pay for the month that. So if you're booking for 90 days, you'll pay for the first month, you book then, and then as you get closer to the second month, then another withdrawal will happen. I'm referring to a 90-day vacation with no plans to purchase. I want to experience France before investing. Yeah, okay, great thing to do. Definitely it's a real challenge to get a long-term rental in France. So if it's for a 90-day vacation and you're going on an adventure, you're trying to get a flavour for things, then Airbnb's got to be the way to go. Is 2 months enough time to work with you and your team to find? Yeah, totally. So if your criteria aligns with the supplier coming on each week, we can find you a place within 3 weeks. Very often that happens. The reason it can be prolonged is because potentially the dossier doesn't match up with the price point that you're going for, and so we're getting consistently rejected by landlords and agencies because of that, or there just isn't enough stock on the criteria that you're using. But we workshop that consistently, because I'm taking on the risk. I've got the team that are sourcing and are booking, so it's very much in my interest to make sure we're reaching out to you and saying, okay, we're struggling with X, Y, Z. These are the reasons why. These could be the changes you make, and if you're not open to making those changes, then we'll refund you straight away, or we can help. The idea is to work with you on that to make sure that you're getting enough options and you're not settling for second best either. How does Lyon and Montpellier rank as expensive compared to Nice and Paris? Well, Lyon's actually still much closer to Nice and Paris than Montpellier. When you're in the center of town, if you start going into the arrondissements, sort of left bank and then further outfield up the hill and things, then things become far cheaper. If I was to put an order to this, obviously Paris, then Nice, then Lyon, then Montpellier. What's interesting though is when you go for higher spec properties, I don't mean like super bling bling and mega high end, but just higher than the average. Actually, these price points start to merge together a little bit more. So places, the 2 to 3 bedroom property that's based centrally, I think the prices are going to be fairly similar between Lyon and Montpellier. It's when you go below that mark that actually things become there's a bigger disparity. Shinebridge 311, I'm interested in Bordeaux. What is the rental market for a renovated apartment with AC, 1 bedroom, central area like Château or Jardin Public? Right, I love Château, Jardin Public. Great spots to be considering. Great choice. Good on you. I'm jealous that you're interested in it and might make it happen. So Lease is there. If you want, depends how many square meters you want, but for a 1 bedroom, so we're not going for a massive place, right? I think you probably want a budget for 1,500. If you want something really nice, 1,700. If you're adding a second bedroom to that, then you're close to 2,200. But that would be the breakdown. When you start going below that and you go towards 1,200, still possible, but you're looking at properties that are probably further away from Château and Jardin Public and that fit the young professional vibe. So the kitchen's smaller, you've got the 2 hobs rather than the 4, and it's a microwave oven rather than a proper oven. So you certainly do pay a premium to be in those nice areas, but well worth it. Really magical spots. Good on you. Blimey, where have those 50 minutes gone? Okay, wonderful. Love that area. Yeah, okay, so 50 square meters. Might be actually a little bit more affordable than 1,300. Could be. I'd budget for 1,500. I'm going to stick with that. This tends to be where we've been hitting with people. It just gets more expensive once you add that extra bedroom on, Thanks for joining us from Italy. Right, thanks for the point that 2-3 bedroom apartments have similar. Yeah, it's really interesting, Eric. Once you hit a certain point, maybe it's a French thing, and they'll go and start a revolution or hit the streets because rent's gone too crazy in each city. But I feel like at a certain level, it becomes unacceptable to charge more. That's the vibe. That's the vibe. What areas of Dijon are most expensive, and what are the average rents? So, how can I bring up a map? I mean, my favorite part in Dijon, which is probably one of the more expensive spots, is Montchappé. But the reality is, as soon as you get closer to the city centres of any town, the rent does climb. So in Dijon, for good spec properties, 1 bedroom, you're looking at 1,100 on average. When you add a 2nd bedroom to that, then probably 1,400, 1,500. And then I don't think, it's super rare, we're doing rents that are above the, let me check the data. I doubt we've done a rental in Dijon above 2,500. And I know the 2,500 one was super special. You get great value in Dijon, in central areas. So I think once you start going further out and you go past the university and things, I'm not sure it's worth considering, because it gets really residential and far less attractive and things. So you want to watch out for that. Now, what's the channel? Is it an amazing Fired Up France, is it? I think it's Fired Up France. Susie, I love her work. If you're looking at Dijon, you're trying to get specific, vibes, different architecture in different areas, I really think you should check that out. Phil, going back to my question. Okay. Yeah. She's awesome, right, Rob? I think she's very special. Going back to my question on Carcassonne Narbonne, what are the prices there for rental? Probably 50 square meters. Narbonne I found to be more cost effective than Carcassonne. So 50 square meters, actually in both, you could probably find for 900 euros a month, that kind of size. Carcassonne naturally will have less stock though. So maybe budget between 900 and 1,100 for those 2 spots. Any opinion on Aubagne? Oh, wow. Okay. This is close to my heart. Family there. A few people told me about it recently. Nice sized town for me. Yeah, Aubagne is really, it's a special part of the world. Not many people inquire about it. My worry would probably be local infrastructure and things, so sometimes you need to think about how easy it is for friends and family to come and visit you, or how easy it's going to be for you to go and explore the rest of the world from. Now, if you've got a car and things, and I guess that's less of a problem, but all these things create extra friction. I always use the example of my parents, or certainly my father. They bought a place in the middle of nowhere in France, very little infrastructure around at all, and as a result, it gave a good excuse for people not to come and visit. I think that was a strategic play by my old man, because he'd had enough of seeing too many people. Aubagne is nowhere near as remote as that, but I still would see a little bit of a risk to it, and also not so easy to get around in the summer, but otherwise the rest of the year is absolutely stunning. Great value compared to Nice, absolutely. Compelling choice. Very unique though. How hard is it to rent a long-term rental remotely before getting there if you get a guarantee and get your help to do virtual visits? Thanks, Natalie. So I wouldn't say it's hard or harder. Certainly some agencies and landlords aren't open to it at all, and they absolutely want to see you there in person. But provided you're choosing a city or region that has plenty of stock, then that shouldn't be a deciding factor. What I would say is it just carries more risk because you're not seeing it in person. So you have to be really, really intentional about that and weigh up the pros and cons. Okay. Okay. So you've seen it in Italy too, right? So it's a real thing. I do wonder. It's kind of hard to get a straight answer out of my old man on this stuff, but when I talk to him about it, it does make me wonder if he'd have done things a little bit differently, because it's quite nice to have friends and family visit you, Okay, questions are drying up a little bit. I'm up for hanging on for another 5 minutes, guys. After that, I'd lose brownie points to my wife. Should be putting dinner on the table, but and I shouldn't be late for that. But if you've got more questions, keep them coming. Otherwise, we can end it early. Let me know. What a great session, though. Some really good questions in there. Thank you, Dawn. I'm enjoying the suspense on that already. Look forward to speaking with you. And for context on this, it's obviously a very public forum, and not everyone's going to want to go into detail on their own search and their own situation. So if you want to grab a call and talk things through, I do them for free. They're my favourite part of the day. You can find a link on our channel for that. We were told by Americans living in Nice to use photos of your last home in the US, maybe to lend. That's an interesting one, David. No, well, we certainly have never been asked for that, and we don't ask for it either. It feels a little bit. How do I? So I can see the idea, because you're sort of backing up your credentials and you're showing the world you come from, and so as a result that should reflect the standards for the future. But we've never been asked for that by agencies or landlords. I'm not sure how much credence it would bring to it anyway. And if your story's compelling enough and your financials are clear enough, then you shouldn't need to go further. What can be a good idea, though, actually, talking about photos, if you're coming over with pets, we always address it straight off the bat. We don't try and hide the fact that pets are involved, because we realise that you're building a long-term relationship with these landlords, and you're going to want them on your side when it counts, right? But photos of your pets to show that they're well looked after and they're not humongous bears that you're bringing over, that can make a real difference to calm their fears. I'm sure you've got lovely photos of your pets, so leverage that. I'm glad you like our newsletters. They're one of my proudest bits of content that we put out each week. My wife puts a lot of time and energy into making those beautiful and very insightful, I think. So I'm glad you see the value in that too. Okay, quick one there. Nantes. I think it's a great city. It wasn't particularly attractive, say, 10 years ago. People weren't picking it when I first got into this ecosystem, but it's really come to surface now. So you've got great transport links, and it's built up enough, right? There's enough going on there to keep you stimulated throughout the year. But I think the switch has mostly come because more and more people are worried about how hot it's getting down south. If you moved to Perpignan 10 years ago, because you love the sunshine and the extra heat and everything, you might be regretting that choice now because it's so much hotter. So lots of people are trying to gradually move their way up there. I've got a soft spot for Nantes, a little bit biased about it. So I just think culturally it's super interesting. So definitely worth exploring. There you go. Photon Boy. I completely agree with you. Very artsy, very walkable, very nice. La Rochelle. Okay, right. Last one on this. Otherwise, I will lose brownie points. I think La Rochelle should be researched way more. So train lines, the TGV are fantastic there. You can get to Paris super easily. You've obviously got Bordeaux further down too if you wanted to mix things up. Property to buy there in the centre of La Rochelle is actually very expensive. To rent, the rental market's solid, very comparable to Bordeaux, if not a little bit cheaper. And it's just beautiful. It's less built up than Bordeaux. So if you kind of wanted that vibe, but with less intensity, then that could be really something to consider. It's right on the ocean there, like lots of sailors love checking in Bordeaux. So it's always a great community to be enjoyed on that. Yeah, definitely add it to your list if that's the sort of lifestyle you're looking to build. Thank you so much, guys. This is my first YouTube live, so I was a little bit nervous tuning in. I wasn't sure how many people were going to log on and actually ask questions. You've made this a really good session, so I'm super grateful. Hopefully see you on the next one. But thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being so engaged. Grazie to you too. Take care, guys. Bye bye.